This is the Love Intervention. I'm Pastor Evans.
I'm Mrs. Evans.
And today we're getting into our adoption. Yeah. So let's get right to it. So the last time we were here on our last episode, we talked about the kind of idea or the process of going through infertility type things, and how it was difficult for us to go through that process. And I think where we ended last time was our decision to adopt. Right. So that's where we are now. So we talked about how we were going to do it, because you can do private adoption, you can do through the county, you can do through other agencies, and I don't know, did we talk to somebody or did we just come across information about adopting through the county, or I don't actually remember why we said.
Okay, so I remember we were driving back up here.
Right.
And I remember you said something about you had talked to somebody.
Oh, you know what? I do remember. I talked to somebody at work, but they had done a private adoption. Talked to somebody at work, and I think this is how God works, right? This is the time when we were kind of going back and forth about what we should do,
Right.
And it was the music teacher at my school randomly tells me about his daughters and how he and his wife adopted, and I was like, wow, okay, God. Yeah, and how wonderful it was. Like there was how their family had grown, and how they had been thinking about it, and they were having a tough time, and how wonderful their family was, and I think that's kind of what, for me, I think that's what said to me that God was saying, this is going to be okay for you. This might be your path.
I mean, but we had always planned to adopt, but just much later in our marriage, after we mostly raised our children. Mostly raised. Like, right. I mean, as far as like getting them to teenage years. So we never intended to adopt for that to be the beginning of our family.
Right.
But we had spoken about and talked about wanting to be a safe place.
Yes.
And so when you came home and you told me about the conversation you had with the music teacher, I was like, oh, okay. Good for them.
Good for them. I don't remember how we got to county adoption, but I think maybe it was one of those other things that God placed it in front of us, and
I think we looked it up.
Did we look it up?
I think
it's probably you probably looked.
Right.
Yeah.
I was about to say we as in me.
Right.
Looked it up, and I found that the process wasn't necessarily as strenuous as a private adoption, where you may have to do a lot of traveling and things like that.
Right. And going overseas or something like that. Right. Or doing some type of surgery. I don't even know what we were, like, surrogacy wasn't even a thing for us. So that wasn't like gonna be.
Yeah, because always on my mind, I was like, it's so expensive. We don't have money for that.
Right.
I mean, at the time, also all of the in vitro and all of that, it just seemed so far outside of our reach that I didn't even consider it.
Right.
Which could be seen as like a lack of faith on my part. Like, God can do all things, but help us with money so that we can start a family. But I was really like, if God could do all the things He did, we can have children biologically. And so, because we had already talked about adoption, and I felt like the kids who were in the county were maybe kids who needed families more. Maybe that's why we went that route.
Yeah. Either way,
I wasn't familiar with the process, though.
No, but I think once you read, you must have researched, because I don't do that. Once
you don't read.
I can read. So
did I say you can't read?
You said I don't read. I read stuff. I listen to a lot of books. I listen to a lot of books.
Read.
Right. Anyway, so I think what happened was in your looking,
Uh-huh.
you find out about the, what is it called, Taking Care of Business Day. I think that's what it was called at the time, where you go and you get your fingerprints through the county and you go and you sign up. It's really
It was
like
the
orientation.
Yeah, it was the orientation, and we were like, let's just go, let's leave.
Was that what we did? We went to orientation.
We went
and
to
then after orientation, they told us about the Taking Care of Business.
Well, no, at the orientation, they had Taken Care of Business. So we went to
the
orientation,
whole thing, huh?
and then they were like, right down there in the next room is Taking Care of Business, and you can get started. And we were like,
right.
Okay.
So we got started.
Right, we just got started.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we went there to get started.
Right. Is that how it worked?
Mm-hmm.
Went to orientation and it was like, you need to go downstairs and get started with the process.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they fingerprint us right then?
I think they did all the things.
I think they did everything.
Yeah.
So, from having the conversation to you doing some research to finding out about the orientation,
right?
It was moving fairly quickly.
It moved fairly quickly because we weren't expecting to get fingerprinted. Like, stand up against the wall.
Right. So.
Right.
From then.
So then we had to do the approval process, and this is where it hit me. Like the other two, like orientation and pride training, I was like, yeah. But not till we got to the approval process was I like,
because the pride training was like taking classes,
right?
It kind of felt
and I was like a professional student, so
right,
it was like,
right.
But once we got to the approval process, I was like, wait a minute, we trying to adopt,
right? You be tripping.
But through that whole process, the pride training and the home study, talking to the social worker, I realized something that I had not realized before, especially because in my mind I was just thinking, you love kids, you discipline kids, and they grow up. But during the process, I was like, oh, okay. So some of the crazy things that I felt like other people were doing, I was like, it's for the benefit of the child, like allowing them to have space and time to work out their feelings, which can look like a tantrum. And because you throw a tantrum in a household that look like mine, it's going down, right? You getting yanked up, swung to the left, and told to be quiet. And not just because my family was abusive, but like in a lot of families, like a tantrum is not what you do. And then the lesson that I learned was that all children can't be raised the same, and that you really have to look at the spirit that God gives them, and have patience. Patience is very important in the process, and that a lot of the ways that people who look like me raise their children is a symptom of the trauma of the enslavement of Africans. Really, that whole like, let me do it before somebody else does it idea that we tend to carry down from generation to generation, and that really just brought it to the forefront that that's not the way I wanted to raise the kids that were gonna come through our family.
Right. That whole like spare the rod, spoil the child thing, that is scriptural.
Right.
The rod of correction is not actually a rod. Right? God is not telling you to beat your children, and that's something that people in general, but black people in particular, got wrong, I think.
Right. You don't need an extension cord to get somebody straight. Right.
You don't need all that. So after everything got approved and we were ready to go, and they said, "You're great," so we were just waiting.
Right.
And so the waiting, I don't know if it seemed long, because I think that and this is for me, and you can speak for yourself, for the first couple weeks after we finished everything, it was like, okay, what's gonna happen?
Well, no,
I don't think that's
what happened.
What?
I don't think that's what happened, because remember, I was in school.
Right.
I graduated, and then we moved in the house like June 1st.
Yes.
And then we were, but during that process from maybe about the time that we actually moved in, during that process from the time about that we actually moved in, we were getting floors done, painting walls.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, like, for the first couple weeks after we got approved, because we moved in, but our approval didn't go through until we moved in June, but our approval didn't get done until maybe July or August, because they had to come back after we finished everything.
Right.
So, like before that, we were doing floors and walls and trying to fix up the house that we never should have bought. But,
for sure.
But I mean, it was our kids' first home too, so we can't say that. But it was an issue.
Right.
So but after the approval, and it was like, yes, you're ready to go. For a couple weeks, I was like, what's gonna happen? But then after that, everything kind of went back to like.
Well,
routine.
we were also doing our like kinship care education during that time.
Because we had to keep the license thing.
So after our tried training, after our pride training.
I'm leaving that part in.
So after our pride training, we still had to do like continual education.
Yes.
And then that was called the foster kinship care education.
Yeah. So the waiting process was interesting because we were still learning.
Right.
And we were just kind of approved.
But I mean, it wasn't like the rest of our life didn't stop.
No.
We were still driving down the hill road. It was just, I think also that summer I started working for Life Touch. Mm-hmm. And so I was working as a photographer, right? And so there wasn't like, it was waiting, but it wasn't like waiting. Because it wasn't like we had known something and then we didn't.
Right, that was my point. Mm-hmm. Like we finished, and for a little while I was like, are they gonna call? And then they didn't call. So we just kind of went back into our routine. Right. So through the process, I learned like one major thing. Because when you're having a child, biologically, naturally, whatever, I feel like I don't know because we weren't able to do it, but I feel like there's an element of surprise to that. Like even when you're planning and you're trying and you're attempting, and we tried and we attempted and had a good time, but even when you're planning, I think there's an element.
Oh, you're so stupid. You're so stupid, man. Okay.
There's an element of surprise to that, right? And when you find out, like, oh yeah, and then you don't actually know when the baby's coming because you get pregnant and grow, and then the baby can come at any time. So there's an element of surprise to that.
Well, there was an element of surprise because we didn't know when they was gonna call.
I know that part, but what I'm saying is, we missed out on that part of the surprise. But what did happen though was during the process, during the orientation and taking care of business and the pride training and the waiting, became super aware of the type of parent I want to be, right? And the fact that we're going to be parents,
right?
You know what I mean? Like because now you're going through these trainings and these classes, and people are telling you about how, and particularly because we were going through foster care, they talked to us a little bit about why kids end up in foster care,
right?
And they talked to us about, and if you're going to adopt an older child, which we were kind of open to, the type of things that you would have to help them work through, right? So we learned about all of those things, and so I became super aware, like, oh, I'm going to be a father. Like, it's not, it didn't feel the same, and I don't have anything to compare it to, but it didn't feel the same as like birthing a child and just kind of figuring it out, because they don't make regular parents go through the training.
And they really should, because at one point in the training, they were talking about just the developmental stages of an infant into their toddler years and into being, school age or whatever. And I'm sure it's something that you had already gone through, but not in such detail, I don't think, because you were still like, wow, like some things, and it just brought to my, I guess, it just made it more clear to me that these are little people, and I have been an aunt for years and years and years, and not that I didn't think she was a person, but just like these are like, this is a whole like life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the baby stage that we don't realize that we're raising adults to be, and that everything that we do is going to affect them one way or another, and going to determine what type of adult they're going to be. I don't think we think about that. We just like, these are some kids, let's raise these kids. They're teenagers, they're about to graduate high school, you're about to get out of my house. And we forget that they need to be successful and be able to succeed on their own. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, because ours are getting older. We love them. But we got other stuff to do.
We got some freedom to have.